thank you everyone for coming. I'd like to introduce Scott. He is our agency counsel for Nightberry Focus Vital. So Scott has graciously agreed to give us his time to educate all of us on the latest trend in the industry, which is fraud. Scott is here to educate us, teach us what to watch for, and help us to be more aware of how we can all team together to combat against them. Yeah.
Yes. So, well, thank you so much. And thank you all for hanging out here today, because we really appreciate being able to get out in front of you folks and just let you know what's going on. Right. And I always start with, have they stopped selling Girl Scout cookies yet?
I hope not.
Oh my gosh, because when they started selling these things, I ordered 4 boxes of the Toastiers and 3 boxes of the Thin Mints. And I was going to keep them in my office all by myself. And I thought, you know what? 7 boxes of cookies is easily going to last me a couple of months. Well, in order to not really feel bad about myself, I kept in the office 3 boxes of the Toastiers and 1 box of the Thin Mints. The rest of it went home. Monday morning, those cookies were delivered to me. I ate an entire box of the Toastiers on Monday by myself. I ate an entire box, no, not quite the entire box, on Tuesday of the Toastiers. When I got to the last cookie in the box on Tuesday, I was so disgusted with myself that I turned around and threw it in the garbage. But then proceeded to eat another 3rd box of Toastiers on Wednesday, which only left me with 1 box of Thin Mints for Thursday and Friday, which I conveniently split a sleeve on Thursday and a sleeve on Friday. So I literally went through 4 boxes of Girl Scout cookies in 1 week, all by myself. So I'm convinced that they've got some sort of addictive additive added to those things that is making us all nuts for them. So I'm trying to stop buying those. What are we talking about today? Okay, when are the criminals going to stop? When are they just going to move on and decide to do something else? Exactly, right? So the new trend here is seller impersonation. Okay, the criminals now are impersonating the sellers in order to, in essence, steal the buyer's money. Okay, and we'll get into that in a bit. But before we get into that, I want to touch base on just some of the numbers. If we look at how this is working here. Advance. We can get to I can talk about this in a second. Was it on there was a button that she pushed. I can't remember which one it said it was. She hit something. But anyway, what we're going to start with is the FBI's internet crime reports. They come out every year, and the numbers that we're dealing with right now, still, those crime reports come out in March of every year. So we're still dealing with 2021 numbers, because the 2022 numbers are going to come out in about a week or so. So you'll still see the 2021 numbers that we're dealing with here. There we go. Terrific. So at least in 2021, there was a 34% increase in internet crime from 2020 to 2021. Right? And as we move along here, you can see the total internet loss in 2021, $6.9 billion. Not million, $6.9 billion. 2.4 billion of that was the business email compromise, the type of fraud that we deal with all the time, where the criminals are getting into our email accounts, spoofing you, us, or the lenders in order to steal the dough. Okay, 2.4 billion of that 6.9. If you look at it in hard numbers, and this is kind of interesting, $6.9 billion. If you take the average home that's about $400,000, that's 17,250 homes that are being stolen in a year. That's a lot of money that we're talking about. Going forward here, you'll see that the average loss from 2016 to 2021 has jumped 4-fold. 2016, the average loss was $30,000. 2021, $120,000. Average loss. Now, these are also just the reported losses. This does not include the stuff that's not reported. In the purple here in that little paragraph, what they're talking about also now is that these criminals, once they get hold of the dough, they're almost immediately turning it over into cryptocurrency. Okay, they're putting it into cryptocurrency wallets, which makes it even more difficult to recover. So that's just another avenue, and it's another reason why we've just got to be more vigilant and keep our spidey senses up even more to make sure that doesn't happen. If we go back here and look, where does Wisconsin stand? 2021, with respect to the rest of the country, we kind of fell right in the middle. With the number of victims, 1,316 victims in 2021, the total loss, $51,816. Still a lot of money. So we kind of fell right in the middle of the country at 29th in the number of victims and 26th, in essence, in the total losses. Let's just kind of talk about how this evolved over the years. When we started, when this internet crime started, at least in the real estate industry, who were they targeting? They started targeting the title companies. Anybody have any idea why they would target the title companies?
Where the money is.
Exactly right. The title companies had the dough. We had the buyer's money, we had the lender's funds. Let's go get it right from the title company. And that's what they started doing. Right around 2010, they would obtain the login credentials for our bank accounts using malware and things like that. And they would just jump in, use those credentials, take the money right out. What do we do, or what did the title companies do in order to stop that? Well, do we allow one person to initiate wire transfers anymore?
No.
Nope. So we can no longer send wire transfers out without more than one person authorizing that wire. After that, they went to, sorry about that, folks. There we go. Let's stay and keep hammering on the title companies. And what were the criminals doing then? They said, okay, well, let's do this. Let's start spoofing emails. Let's compromise somebody's email account. Agent, bank, title company, somebody's account. We're going to compromise that. We're going to get in there. We're going to start looking at these emails that are going on in these real estate transactions. Okay. And then what will happen is right before the closing, we're going to jump in and spoof an email saying that we're the seller by changing that email address just by one digit or something like that. And then ask the title company to wire transfer my sale proceeds to my account, and here are my wire transfer instructions. So the title companies will get these emails from the seller saying, hey, we understand you're going to cut us a check, but we prefer that you wire transfer the money into our account. Here are my wire instructions. Thank you very much. Or they would say, we understand that you've got my wire transfer instructions that we sent originally. Plans have changed, because those may have been the legitimate instructions. Plans have changed, folks. I'd really prefer that you send them over to this account instead. Right? And that's what the title companies would do. Shoot the money out, seller doesn't get theirs, criminals got it, and away they go. Jump forward now to about 2015. They started thinking, the title companies are catching on to us a little bit. They're getting a little bit smarter. Now who should we go after? Let's just take it right from the buyers. Let's just steal the buyer's dough before they even have a chance to send it to the title company for their purchase. So what they would do is they would do the same thing, in essence, is compromise somebody's email, lender, title company, or agent, and say, as soon as they're watching these and they see the numbers come out comes a false email or a fraudulent email to the buyer saying, here's how much money you need for your purchase. Here are our wire transfer instructions. Send the money right to the title company of this account. Okay? And they're fraudulent instructions. I dealt with one of those, I want to say right around 2015, where I had sent the wire transfer instructions, our wire transfer instructions, to the lender, and I was emailing those to the lender. I emailed to the lender. I said, pick up the phone and call me and confirm the wire transfer instructions that I'm sending to you. Lender picked up the phone, called me, and verified the wire instructions. I said, those are the ones. He said, okay, I'll email those to my customer. He emails the wire transfer instructions to his customer along with a note saying, hey, as soon as you get this, pick up the phone and call me so we can verify the information. Doesn't hear from the customer, calls the customer then and says, hey, I sent you wire transfer instructions. I want to just verify the information you've got for our closing for tomorrow. The borrower said, I already sent the money. He said, you what? He said, I already received your wire transfer instructions. I sent the money already. $111,000. They were able to recover about 95,000 of that. Okay, but the rest of it had to come from other sources. They were able to close because they were able to get a temporary loan from mom and dad or some third-party source in order to be able to get the deal closed, but yes.
How long did that recovery time take?
Months for them to get all of that money back.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a month.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because when they started sending this money out, they wouldn't send it all out overseas in one lump sum. They would send it out in increments. I'm not quite sure why, not quite sure if there were limits on that or what. But if they were able to get that account frozen, perhaps only X number of dollars would have gone out at that time. So they were able to recover more than the majority of it. So we've dealt with that already. Now, once that started happening, what we started thinking is, look, we've got to get more consumer awareness out here. We've got to get out in front of the agents. We've got to get out in front of the attorneys who represent buyers and sellers. We've got to get out in front of the bankers and let them know that this is a big problem. And that's what we started doing back then. We've been doing it ever since, and we'll continue to do it until the problem is solved. As they start to change, we'll start to change. And we'll continue to educate and make sure that we can stay on top of this stuff. The other thing we used to we started doing is talk about multi-factor authentication. Okay. 3 other things that we would do then too is we'd say, look, in situations where buyer doesn't have to wire transfer the funds in, don't require them to wire it in. Let's go back to cashier's checks. And a lot of times there are title companies that say anything more than $25,000 got to be a wire. Anything more than $50,000 got to be a wire. We've got a different philosophy on that. Our motto is wire in, wire out. As long as the money that's being wired in, for example, from the lender's proceeds would cover any wire transfers that we're sending out, seller proceeds, mortgage payoffs, things like that, we'll take a cashier's check from the buyer all day long. Okay, so if the lender's proceeds are going to cover what we're being asked to wire out, and that's why it's kind of a case-by-case basis, because we obviously don't know if we are always wiring sellers' proceeds. We don't know if we are always wiring off payoffs. But as long as we have enough money wired in that would cover anything being wired out, we'll take a cashier's check from the buyer for the amount due.
Can I pause you right there? So that makes sense to everybody. So essentially your buyers are borrowing more, so they're not coming in with 10% down, right? They're financing more, then the lender's buyer coming in will in turn be higher. So if you're trying to figure that out on your own, that's your starting point, like how much is my customer borrowing versus what is the purchase price? And you can usually make an educated guess, but then as it gets closer to closing, always reach out to us to make sure that they're within that threshold. And we communicate this right up front with the lender, but we kind of let the lender drive that bus because it's their transaction with the buyer.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a good suggestion is if your customer wants to bring a cashier's check, or if they're thinking about bringing a cashier's check, just shoot an email, say, hey, is this a possible transaction where the borrower can bring a cashier's check in rather than wire it?
I had a problem when I first became, I'm an investor at Keller Williams, and when I had to send money for the investment to Scott Klaas, I said, do you want it in a check, blah, blah, blah. Well, that word check did that, for all of a sudden, Scott got 26 emails from me that I didn't send. And it was telling me to wire money, and it was, I would have lost, lots and lots of money. And so that's the verbiage that they look for.
Yep. Anytime they see anything that might reference money is when that's when now we're pouncing on it. Yeah. It's scary. So, anytime we can get a cashier's check, if the transaction will allow it, we're saying, let's do it. Okay. If we're wiring, again, we're making sure that we're verifying wire instructions verbally. We're not relying on any phone numbers that come in on some wire transfer instructions, because the wire transfer instructions are bad. What do you think about that phone number that might be there saying, if you have any questions, give us a call? They're probably bad too. So we're saying use verified phone numbers, use numbers that and that's what I would do. I'll call you folks and say, hey, give me the phone number that you've been using to contact your buyer or seller so that I can verify the information. I've got a verified phone number.
And that is why we are constantly asking you guys to share your customers' information with us. Because we want it from you, the phone number that you receive. So our best practice is to ask for that in the very beginning, right? So you all have our forms that you take to your listing appointments, making sure that we get that in the forefront of the transaction. Same with buyers. If you're a buyer's agent, make sure that you know that we're going to ask you for your buyer's phone number, because we want to make sure we are taking all of these protocols to ensure the integrity of the funds in the transaction.
We're trying to get on it as early as possible. As soon as a title order is placed, we're going to send an email out to the borrower if we have the information to say, contact us, here's our wire transfer instructions, here's how we handle the wire transfer information. And we use this company called Certified. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not, but they're a fraud prevention and recovery company. We utilize them to vet buyers and vet sellers, in order to securely send wire transfer instructions to a buyer, for example. So they'll ask knowledge-based questions of that particular buyer to make sure they're talking to the right person. Then they can send the wire transfer instructions securely. And if we're dealing with a seller, they will vet that seller to make sure that the seller is the right person who's providing the wire transfer instructions. So it's just another layer of protection. When I'm dealing with a seller, what I'll often do is say, hey, I'm gonna get your wire transfer information, but we're gonna do it two ways. Okay. Tell me the wire transfer information, and also we're gonna use Certified, so that when I get those instructions, I'll be able to verify not only with what Certified had, but with what I've got over the phone. I'll do it with buyers too. You're gonna deal with Certified, and they will send you the wire transfer instructions securely. But at the same time, here's what you're gonna see. And I'll tell them what the wire transfer instructions are gonna say. So that when they get those wire transfer instructions, they'll feel more comfortable saying, oh, this is what that goof from Nightberry told me is what it's gonna say. And here's what the instructions do say. So it's just another layer of comfort.
And what's fearful is, will there all of a sudden be a company that will say that they're certified?
It certainly could be, who knows?
I've been scammed a few times myself about things that look so good, they have so many layers, it's an art.
Mhm. Everybody's getting better with it. I mean, is that a possibility? I guess, sure. But once we start dealing with the same folks over and over again, we'll just stay with the model that we've got rather than switching anything.
Do you suggest keeping those types of conversations off email in general? And strictly reserving those for telephone, or if it's iMessage, those are encrypted.
Again, I guess I don't have, if you can, sure. But if you are going to include any of that conversation in an email, make sure that your customer knows that we're going to verify this verbally, because the criminals don't want to talk to anybody. They don't want to have any conversations. Everything is text and email. Okay. So as long as they're aware that we're going to be verbally verifying, we're going to be talking about this, that's fine. And also mention that whatever we send you will not change. So once we've verified the information, understand that it's not going to change. So if you get another text message or an email saying, hey, guess what? The plans have changed. Please send my stuff here. Tell them not to pay any attention to it and pick up the phone and call you or call us to verify again what we're dealing with. And again, we just have our little slide here with respect to multi-factor authentication. And I'm sure you've all got it on your cell phones and you've all got it connected to your email accounts, right? Okay. So even if you've got personal emails on your cell phone, you should get it taken care of on your personal email too. Okay. The criminal can get your username or password. Okay. If they have it, they can get into your email accounts. That's one of the reasons that they're jumping in here and stealing the stuff. They're having folks click on bad links that they shouldn't be clicking on, first of all. Okay, that's one way that they can get in. The other way is to have your username and password. They're very clever and somehow they end up figuring those out. But if you've got two-factor authentication, they can't get in unless they've also got your cell phone. Because your cell phone has that 6-digit number that's got to be input in order to be able to get in. So if you don't have two-factor authentication, get it. If you don't know how to get it, you can go to YouTube. Okay, they'll walk you right through it. Okay. Usually, and I know Jerry was saying that most of the time, you folks all have two-factor authentication on your phone. Good, because she was saying that a lot of times, roughly 30% of the agents don't have it at any usually presentation. So if you don't, you gotta get it. It's really
Do
important.
we have it?
Yeah,
Okay.
Good.
Sarah, I asked Ashley about that a few weeks.
Okay, good.
Here's another interesting thing that the criminals are doing. This is called spoof card. Has anybody ever heard of spoof card? I've never seen it. But apparently what the criminals can do, and I think this was actually out there and advertised as something for consumers to kind of help them with their time management and whatnot, where you can get these virtual phone numbers and you pay $30, for example, and you get 160 minutes for $30. And it gives you a virtual phone number that you can then use. And when you're going to send the virtual phone number, you can immediately have the call go directly to the recipient's voicemail. So it automatically triggers their voicemail rather than them picking it up. And again, I don't understand necessarily the benefit of it to the consumers other than, but what they're advertising it as is keep your time, manage your time a lot better, just send voicemail messages and things like that. So they're saying, you know, you can use this just to send a voicemail message and you can have them call you back and things like that. Well, the criminals are using this as a means of sending messages in order to get listing agents, for example, like you folks, to list properties for sale so they can steal the property. So they've got this virtual number and these spoof cards, the phone numbers on these virtual numbers cannot be traced unless it's part of a subpoena for a criminal, some sort of criminal activity. Just like any cell company won't provide people with actual text messages and the text in those messages unless it's part of a subpoena. So it's just another thing that they're doing in order to keep them from being detected. Okay. And again, the calls will go straight to voicemail. If I'm sending a message using spoof card, there are some selections that you can make when you send the message. I can actually choose it so that it's a female voice that's being recorded or going out, as opposed to a male voice. You can also select certain background noises, dogs barking, people in the background, things like that, just to try to make it a creative way of sending the message. So again, criminals are using this to gain another advantage. And like I said, 160 credits or 160 minutes of call time, $30. Really cheap for these guys to be able to do it. So here's the newest twist. Seller impersonation fraud. So the Secret Service is already putting out their messages saying beware of sellers that are criminals that are impersonating sellers to try to get these things closed. And here's how it works. Started down in Florida. I don't know why it necessarily started in Florida, because maybe all the best crimes start in Florida. I don't know, but down in Florida, maybe it's a lot of vacant land, maybe it's relatively elderly population. I was gonna say that could be a thing. It could be another reason, but it has made its way up here. Okay, it's made its way up here. And so here's how it works out. The criminal goes to the land records. They find out who owns a piece of property, and then they contact a listing agent in that area. Says, hey, I'd like to list my property, which is located there, and will you go take a look at it? Now, usually this is vacant land, okay? But they say, go ahead and take a look at it. Let's connect them together. Let's get a listing put together. The listing agent will get the listing contract in place. The agent will go and find a buyer. Buyer will sign a contract. The criminal will sign the contract. They'll get a title company involved. Buyer's money will be wired into the account. Title company will prepare the closing documents, send them out to the criminal, who will then have the deed and everything signed, notarized, and sent back. Money's in, we disperse using wire transfer instructions that were sent by the criminal. Money goes to the criminal. The buyer now has lost a ton of dough, all the cash for the purchase, basically, of the property, and has nothing to show for it. Okay,
I mean, the criminal never owned the property, obviously.
that's right. Criminal
And none of
sign.
that was caught with title search or anything?
No. No, not through the search, because it's the name of the seller who's.
That is amazing.
Mhm.
It only would happen to vacant land?
Right now, yes, and the reason for that. Take a look at this email right here, and I hope you can, if you can't see it, I'll read it. It's from a gentleman named Dieter Klug, and this was an actual email that came into a listing agent that then was working with our office down in Florida and provided the actual email to our office in Florida. Thank you for your email. I understand that you are a real estate agent in Navarre, Florida. As you may know, due to hearing impaired, I won't be able to talk on the phone, but I would prefer a steady email communication only because of my health challenge. Also, as you know, my lot located here with parcel number here is up for urgent sale. I want to sell it on or off MLS as prospective buyers, to any prospective buyers, because I am in urgent need of cash money for settling my accumulated medical bills because I am on a life support machine. It gets better and better, doesn't it?
Fraudulent, but imagine just receiving that email. Right.
Oh, and it gets
Are you gonna be
better.
aware of the red flags right away?
Exactly. You think that this would start raising some red flags. This gets better. So bear in mind that I am selling the lot because I am far away from home, as I am in urgent need of cash for the third time, because of my health, third time, as I am presently far away in Southeast Asia, Vietnam, where I am presently taking medications, though my original address is here in Germany, but I'm not available at my address right now because I am away due to health challenges and I lost my house due to fire. Okay, well, then it goes on a little bit more to say how urgent it is to sell and things like that. Okay, so that email, at first you look and you go, oh, you kill a person, but then you realize this is a criminal. Okay, so the email gets over to our office and we say, well, okay, number one, classic fraud. Okay, classic fraud. We sent a communication over to say, send us a picture ID. We need a photo ID. Okay. Coincidentally, when we asked for that photo ID, we had recently received a notice from our underwriter in Florida about another criminal fraud, and here's the ID from that other criminal. If you look, our Dieter Klug is also Heinz or Sorge Heinz. So right away, we were able to look at that and say, oh my gosh, these are fraudulent passports here. And we were at least said, look, this transaction's not happening. So with the help of our underwriters, we're sending out these notices of potential fraudulent passports and IDs. We're able to match this one together and say, look, this is.
But isn't the name attached to the property? And when you're doing title search, it's all the tax records? Why? I mean,
They know the name.
Yeah.
We don't know what that person looks like.
Right.
So they're
oh,
providing
they're saying.
fraudulent ID.
They're using the
Oh,
seller's
yeah, that's right,
name.
I'm saying.
They're impersonating the seller. So here's the thing. What are the red flags that we're looking for here? And this is all the important stuff. This is probably the most important thing we're going to talk about today is what do you keep your eyes open for? And I'm not saying that every one of these transactions is fraudulent. Okay, but this is the stuff that's going to at least raise your eyebrows to say, should we at least think about this a little bit? Number one, usually unimproved land. Okay, because it's an absentee owner. Why do you think it might be unimproved land? Why would land be more attractive?
It's not being monitored.
Right?
No one's living there.
Nobody's there, right? You can, it's not like going to a listing appointment with a house where you're gonna meet the seller and say, hi, how are you? That kind of thing. The seller's gonna say, my land's over there. I'm in Vietnam and I live in Germany, but go and take it a look at it and check it out and then just get back to me on it. Okay? Absentee owner, there's nobody there. It's easy to see. And they can certainly get the names from the tax records because it's all public information. Usually the properties are free and clear of mortgages. Why is that? Maximize profitability. Doesn't necessarily mean that it can't have a mortgage on it because most sellers or these imposters may not know the status, but usually it's mortgage free. And even if there is a mortgage on it, it would just be paid off out of the closing proceeds. Seller and the criminal gets a little bit less dough, but usually it's free and clear. There's usually a connection to one or more foreign countries. If you saw the line email, dealing with both Vietnam and Germany. only wants to communicate using text message and email. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to see you. Let's just,
Support.
and I just. I can't hear very well. Okay.
Can't talk, can't hear.
Right. The sales prices are usually at a bargain. These next three are
They
kind of
have to
tied
be
together.
quick, right?
Exactly. Typically a rush transaction, pressure to close fast. Why is that? I want to get in, I want to get out. And they're usually cash transactions because they don't want a lender involved. What's the lender gonna do? It's just an extra set of eyes, number one. Number two, underwriting and things takes a while. Let's get this in and get out and maximize our profit. Seller will usually insist on using their own notary in order to sign the deed. Okay, we've completely changed that. Okay, but that's usually one of the things they want. Why would that be?
Because it's a fraudulent person doing it too, right?
Exactly, right. If the person signing the deed is a criminal, you think the notary's legitimate?
Yes, I mean, common practice has been, you know, we email out or we ship out the closing docs. They sign wherever in front of their notary, they send them back, and so what are we doing now with that?
Exactly.
Spoiler.
Exactly. I think a couple more of these, then we're gonna jump right into a situation that Jennifer's dealing with.
Because I want to make sure you see our.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, usually the ID is a forgery, as you can see there, and the seller is usually requesting that the proceeds be wired somewhere overseas. Okay, to another country. So Jennifer, you want to jump in?
Sorry. Yeah, it's not. I'm so excited to share this story. It's sad, but,
Switch stuff.
okay, no, don't do that, don't go far away.
Okay.
Because you were part of this too.
Oh, yeah, okay, yes.
Okay. So Scott did a great job talking about the fraud, like on the unimproved lands, but it's also happening on properties, like houses in our area. So 3 weeks ago, Focus Title received an email from a buyer saying, hey, this seller has agreed to sell property to me. Here's our offer to purchase, quick close. And we'd like to retain your services. So we got the email. I immediately was like, something seems a little fishy. And Scott and the rest of our council had like programmed all of us closers to follow our gut instinct. So don't ever be able, you know, if we say something doesn't seem right, don't be offended. Like,
If it wants it,
it
it's
trained us to think
not
this way.
it's probably
Okay,
not
so
big.
we received this offer to purchase. I printed it out. I right away engaged with him. Yep, okay, we'd love to help you out with this. Send me your offer to purchase. Send me your contact information. I need your phone number. I need seller's phone number so we can reach out to the seller. There's some documents we'll need to collect from that. They never addressed my questions, but they were very good about making sure constant communication was happening. So offer to purchase, print it out. It says Wilson's Data buyer with a mailing address of, he lives in Columbia, DC. Seller Lauren Cohn gives her address and then street address, 5844 North Kent Avenue. So I first pulled the tax bill for Kent Avenue. Well, on this one, Foster's not too smart because Lauren Cohn is not the seller, like she's not the owner of records. So, he gives me an address for Lauren. So I look up Lauren's address in Sun Prairie. So I go to this street address, Sun Prairie. No, Lauren's not the property owner for that either. It's a builder. Okay, Wilson's, I'll play your game. So we start engaging with him. Meanwhile, real house, like this house is truly for sale, listed by a Shore West agent. Buyer's agent is a KW agent. Order goes to Nightberry Title, Scott. So Scott's working on the true closing, and I continue engaging with Wilson's. Fast forward a couple weeks, he sends us his earnest money deposit, $75,000. So we receive it certified mail, right? You look at the check, okay, Do you know what you're looking at with fraudulent check? Maybe, maybe not. I, of course, already knew that it was a fraudulent transaction. I'm just baiting him, playing the game with him to find out what his end game is. Why are we doing this? So that we have resources to educate all of you, so that you guys are protected, so you know how to protect your clients. So the more information we can gather, if he's willing to continue engaging with me, it's going to benefit us, right? So he sends us $75,000 earnest money. I send him a receipt saying, yes, and now Lauren's talking to me. Lauren is our seller. So Lauren's talking to me, Wilson's is talking to me, Wilson's financial advisor who issued the check is talking to me. Everybody wants to get this to closing. Well, a day passes, and he wasn't very patient, so only a day passes, and all of a sudden, Lauren, my seller, says, I moved on to another buyer. You took too long to deliver your earnest money. Literally in a matter of 15 minutes, I had 7 emails between Wilson's and Lauren going back and forth saying, I'm so sorry this didn't work out. No, you told me that you would be patient and wait, right? So they're engaging. Then I get an email from our seller, Lauren, and she says, Jennifer, I'm moving on to this new buyer. Please refund Wilson's his $75,000 earnest money deposit. Okay, Scott, how's your transaction coming along?
Mine's closing, I think, on the 24th.
So Wilson's very quickly sends me wire instructions via email. The wire instructions that we received on Monday just so happened to be going to a bank that the FDIC just shut down for dabbling with cryptocurrency. What's the name? What's that bank?
Signature.
Signature Bank. So I reply to Wilson's and I say, Wilson's, I'm so sorry, but the bank that you provided your deposit information for was just shut down by the FDIC and I can't facilitate your wire transfer. Do you have another set of wire instructions you can send me? Guess what? He does. So he sent me another set of wire instructions. And I said, okay, thank you. I'll work on processing it. Then I say, I'm sorry, Wilson's, for some reason, there's a problem verifying this account information. Please give me a call to discuss. He of course doesn't call. Let me back up to the beginning of the transaction. He did provide us with a phone number in his signature block, and we did try calling the phone number, but shocking, we couldn't get through. So receive another email from him with a third set of wire instructions. So now I'm like, okay, how long are we going to keep going back and forth? What, we got to speed this up a little. So I tell Wilson's that we need to send it and verify through our certified protocol, which for those of you who have had customers who have received certified, you know how it works. But if you don't, what happens is we need a trusted phone number and an email address that we receive from you guys for your clients. And we initiated through the certified platform. Buyer Wilson's receives an email, and then he receives a text with a code to his cell phone number. And then he uses that code to plug into the email, and then he can complete the process. So I say, Wilson's, I'm going to have to send this to you through our certified. I think that's the only way that I can facilitate the refund of your money. I want to expedite this process for you. So the only phone number I have for him is a foreign phone number. Play the game, enter it in, reply to him, and I say, hey, your phone number is a non-US phone number. I really need a US phone number to complete this. Do you have one? He does.
Of course.
He does. So he sends us his US phone number. I send the certified to him. So I plug in his bank information that he's given me for bank number 3. He unfortunately, I think he broke up with me. He's no longer communicating to me. It's been 12 hours, but he logged onto our certified platform thinking that he could continue playing this game with me. He must have, it came to a screeching halt. But what can we do now? Now we're hoping that certified, who has direct connections with the Secret Service, can track his VPN. Because when people fail the certified, it could be because they don't remember what color truck they owned, in 1999. So it could be an honest mistake, right? Because the questions pull from your credit. But oftentimes they fail because they're spoofing, they're bouncing off of a different VPN. Certified can tell us when that is the situation. So Wilson's has not been able to go much further. I'm not sure if we'll get his VPN information. It's not looking likely. But over the course of 3 weeks, we've now been able to compile enough data to hand over to Certified, who will then take it to the Secret Service. It's scary. This guy gave me 3 different account numbers. These account numbers probably belong to somebody. So if we're not paying attention, if we're not educated and educating you guys, I deposit this check, which, I mean, how many of you were like, oh, that's fraudulent? Like, it looks pretty good, right? If I would have deposited this check into my account and then wired out as quickly as he wanted me to, now we're out $75,000.
Where you usually wait till it's clear
Yes.
before you send anybody. And like we have a camera, you still.
Wilson's is not the smartest structure that we've encountered. He's made a lot of mistakes. But we can say that with confidence because we know what we're looking for. We know what we're following, right? His initial email had broken English, not correct, like his verbs were all over the place. Like you could tell that, okay, something is fishy about this. And like Scott said, we follow our gut. So if it's fishy, it's fishy. This one was a pretty easy one to spot. But when we called the listing agent who truly has this Kent Avenue property listed, she was like, how did this happen? And we don't know for sure. Did somebody speak of it? Because this offer to purchase, this offer is dated like days before the property hit the market.
So do you think that they intentionally look for a property that is on the market that's not necessarily accepted offer yet, or?
This one wasn't actually on the market yet. So I think it was 2 or 3 days before the property went live. In your world, you guys know what that means better than I do,
Right.
but before, according to the agent, before it went live is when we received this offer. So somehow, some way, they knew. And they picked Focus Title. Why? Because maybe there was a Keller Williams agent on the other side, and I don't know. Why didn't they send this email to Nightberry? I don't know. How they got, Focus is not actually involved in the true transaction. That's all Scott's world, but.
Well, they couldn't have gone to Nightberry.
Right. Well, at the time, they didn't know.
Oh, yeah, so
they know.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to have that emphasize that dual authentication, like make sure that you're safeguarding, because innocent conversations that you think you're having, these people can watch in the background. And it could just be an AI and artificial intelligent bot doing all of this legwork.
Have you guys experienced Craigslist where they will often call you about your own property wanting to rent? A renter will call us and say, is your place?
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
So it's scary, but it's real.
They get
So
rent money for a house that's not full.
some of the things on this, I'll just point out, so not that you guys are handling the money, you trust that we're going to do that. But the check was detached from this stub when I received the overnights. Looking at it, our check number does not match the check stub, okay? Usually checks don't have this pretty seal on them, like it makes it look official, but checks don't really have that. This is usually you don't have that big padlock on the back, maybe as a watermark, but not like that. Our routing number is way too close to the check number. So these are things that we're trained to look for. I'm not saying that things don't get passed, but what happened in this situation, Satori Homes, we looked them up. They are actually a builder in California. So we attempted to call them, our accounting department attempted to call them and say, hey, I think your checks may have been stolen. Because this signature, which when I tell you what it says, it'll make sense, but Michelle Gracie is who that signature is trying to match. She is the registered agent for Satori Homes.
Wow.
does everybody have time to do this kind of digging? No, but that's where you put your trust in your title company of choice to make sure that, the due diligence is happening to protect
Thank you,
your
thank you, thank you.
customers. So there's a lot wrong with this check. This is, I think I might frame it. I've never actually received the earnest money that they say they're gonna send, and it came so official.
Right.
That's a good amount.
Yeah. The purchase price is $750,000.
Oh, perfect.
Like,
Yep.
but it just makes you, I don't know, scratch your head, right? Like, my USPS is from a Richard Alston in Temple, Texas. My check is drawn off of a company that's out of California. Wilson's is in BC. Like, they are all over the place. So Scott's, example was different countries being all over the place. This is a great example of right here in the United States, all over the place.
Racket.
Sure is.
So what's the best practice for us if we had a situation where it seems like it's above board, like somebody contacts us that they do have land, but they don't even live in the state, they're not gonna meet me there.
So
Like their
I
address
text
kind of
them.
matches up, their name matches up with stuff, but it's like, I don't know. How do we go to you to say, can you verify this really is the person we're talking about?
Well, as a matter of fact, that's
The
what we're
next
gonna,
slide.
we're gonna get to right now, as a matter of fact, you're exactly right. One of the things that we like to do is scrutinize those communications. Just like Jennifer was doing, is make the phone calls.
Yeah.
Start talking to people, find out what's going on. Our gentleman, do you only want to talk via text and email? Well, that's automatically going to raise some eyebrows. And so now let's try to get you to have a conversation. And if you won't, well, okay, looks like it could be fraud. Why are you selling the property? And who are all of these players? Why is this here and why is that over there? And what's going on? So it's a lot of it is just doing some digging, make some phone calls. It's the best way to talk to people.
Right.
Everybody wants to talk by text and email, pick up the phone.
Yeah, and we have this at one of our, and I hope I'm not stealing
No, ma'am.
something. Our offices in northern Wisconsin, was it this month or last month? Where there was a seller impersonation saying that he was selling the property. And that listing agent's takeaway from it was that she was going to incorporate that uncomfortable question of asking somebody for their driver's license when she meets them for the listing appointment. So that it doesn't get further along. So,
Sure.
that seems weird. Like, I don't know that I would be like, oh, you call me, you want to sell your house. Am I really gonna come to your house and say, can I see your driver's license? Like, as a notary, I do every time your clients walk through the door for a signing. But, we want to trust people and believe that the person is who they say they are, but maybe we need to step up our game and, do you have a driver's license on you? Like, how far are these fraudsters willing to go? If they're willing to meet you in person? I don't know.
If they're willing to meet you in person, chances are it's a legitimate transaction. More often than not, it would be a
So
legitimate.
then do you want to ask for the driver's license?
Right.
Maybe not, but
Can make it sound like it's part of your protocol and a copy of it.
And again, as you guys have learned in your CE stuff, it's as long as you're doing it with everybody,
Yeah.
if that's the office policy, and as long as you're doing it with everybody, you can't get in any trouble.
Good point.
Right.
I was thinking you're only doing it when you're suspicious, but you're right.
Yeah, you can't.
It would have to be a policy that everybody's doing,
Right.
right? So not only figure out what's going on, take a look, maybe make some calls. If you don't, if for example, one thing that we might do is if we can't see who the seller is, we can maybe ask around. Who knows who the seller is? Talk to the agents, for example, and say, do you know the seller? If you don't know, do we know anybody who might know the seller? Ask the seller then, are you really selling this property? If we can't do that, where do you find a seller's name? Same place that the crook found him. Go to the tax records. You'll be able to see the seller, the actual owner of record, and the address to where their tax bills are sent.
Sometimes it's in a trust or something.
That's true, but they'll have an address as to where tax bills are sent. So you can at least send a letter, for example. That's what we would do. We'd send a letter out to them and say, hey, we got this offer to purchase on this property, and we're just checking out to make sure that everything's legitimate, that we're on, and you kind of couch it by saying, we just want to make sure we're all on the right path and everything's going smoothly. We want to make this transaction as smooth as possible for you. Do me a favor, if you would, please give me a call. We just want to touch base on the transaction. If they're not selling the property, you can darn well bet they're gonna pick up the phone and call you in a hurry.
And here's my shameless plug for Focus Title, like, we have this letter, we can do this for you, we can help you.
But I'm surprised, I mean, I've sold homes for lots of people I've never met, they're out of the country or out of state. How did you guys know that? I mean, thank God it went all the way to the closing, and everything was fine, but how would you know? What would you do when no one's ever met them?
Well, again, I mean, a lot of this stuff, you stumble on it. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's like
We probably
anything.
should bring you everybody that we've never met.
Yeah,
That way we've never, I mean, I've never met the seller. Why not bring them to your attention and say, hey, I'm never gonna be able to meet them.
if you've never met the seller, again, that's where we're talking about controlling the signing,
Yeah,
okay? If
Which
you've
we
met-
do, so that will answer your
Yeah.
question.
no, okay,
Why all those run so smooth?
okay.
If you've got a photo ID, one of the things, at least one of our sources would be jump on Facebook or jump on a social media site
Yeah.
and check the name and see if the name on that social media site matches the ID that they've sent. Ask for video calls with the seller to compare photo IDs. If you're doing again, most criminals don't want to talk to you, don't want to see you, don't want anything to do with that. That's a red flag. If they are able to do that, or they do want to, just compare IDs that you've got and at least see if you're talking to the right
So if
person.
we ask them for a copy of their driver's license, because we're never meeting them. Because we're not doing that to everybody else. Can't that be a protocol? We do it on everybody we haven't met and be okay, legit wise?
I suppose, you may want to run that by,
Yes.
rather than check it out, but that would seem to me to be at least one of the carve outs as to not maybe doing it to everybody. You just say, look, I've never met this person.
Right, I think that makes sense.
And that may be a good carve out. But again, as long as everybody's doing it to everybody that they've never met.
Yeah.
And I mean, the purpose of this training is not to scare anybody, it's to
Totally.
educate. So,
A little bit. Yeah, no,
and Scott, I'll talk about it in a minute, but we have protocols in place where we control the signing. So just because you've never met them, like, that doesn't mean that you can't take their business.
Right.
You have lots of buyers. I've closed for your buyers, Judy, and we're like, I've never met Judy because they were, maybe a Zillow lead or something. Eventually we get to meet them, right? We do see them, we do vet them, we do verify them. We're doing the same thing with the seller by controlling the signing.
Mhm.
We're no longer just willy-nilly sending off closing paperwork and deeds to somebody to take to their bank, because the fraudsters aren't gonna stop. Like, there's always new developments, and Focus Title, with our parent Nightberry, we are usually one step ahead, right? So we are great at anticipating, knowing, learning from other people's mistakes so that our family isn't having those mistakes.
Right.
And quick to put into place a protocol that maybe doesn't seem convenient when we tell you about it. But the purpose of this training is so that you understand why we are doing things the way that we're doing it.
And then just a couple more things. Again, there would be the laundry list of those things that should raise your awareness. These are the things that you can use to perhaps, or that we would use to perhaps try to snuff out and prevent the fraud from happening. Require more than one form of ID. And then again, just as Jennifer was mentioning, control the signing. Okay, we either do a RON transaction, a remote online notary transaction. We handle the pre-sign of the transaction. We have vetted notary companies. Let's say your seller's in California. We have vetted notary companies that we can contact who are legitimate notaries who will then require the photo ID in order to get things signed.
It's interesting, the Zoom idea might be to make sure that the driver's license match.
Yeah, it's there, and again, just certain things we can do. As long as we're controlling the signing, we're okay. If the deed is signed in the US Embassy.
Yeah.
What's that?
I
was gonna say.
Cheap Facebook on everybody.
If I don't know a new buyer.
Oh,
Zillow lead or
Yeah.
lead for Park City. I will Google, I will go on Facebook. Then probably. Just put it out there, copy back
Sure.
to somebody else.
Yep.
If I get there and that's not the person,
That's the security feature there.
Only if they're real hard, not the
They
jitter.
don't punish you.
Really shows.
She may not speak loud, but she speaks volume.
Exactly, yeah. Sure.
Yeah, good point.
He lived here, he went to UWF, his mom lived down south. It was coming up here about. He was like, I don't know why.
In now,
He didn't even remember.
but you haven't pooped since 1:00 in the morning.
Yeah, so I feel like. So many.
Sometimes they have someone muted themselves. I haven't either, I guess.
I didn't know he's gonna take one of their. They want to see the approval, it was their IDs, I said, for who you're gonna have to find a different agent. They're not gonna-
Good for you.
It's like,
Yes,
it didn't feel right, and
yeah, and that's the security factor there for sure.
And following the gut feeling, you said that you say that.
Yeah, usually your gut's right, I'm sure.
so I feel like it's not a weird thing.
If it comes off more complicated than it needs to be, that's usually when,
Mhm.
like, why do we have to go through all these extra steps?
Yeah, but you also have to keep in mind. The vibe now is sort of with respect to IDs and the discrimination issues and things like that. That you do have to keep in mind that obviously you've probably been trained on all of that and how to address those things. And in order to continue to be safe when you're doing that, you know, but that's the reason why you could have 99 transactions where nobody says anything. But if you've got somebody who really gets uptight about it and wants to raise an issue about it, and even go to the next level with it from a discrimination standpoint, for example, that's where you could just gotta make sure that everybody's programs and all your policies are in place. They're correct. And I don't want to get into a CE discussion anymore here, but so
Yeah,
again,
you teach CE
I do.
classes, so, you know.
I do.
Don't you look familiar?
So again, down here, the last one here, we dealt with a situation where we had a deed that was signed, the person was in the Netherlands. And so we're saying, hey, look, if you're finding out that the deed is being signed in another country, make the person go to the embassy or the consulate, the US embassy or the consulate, and get it signed there. And it's funny, the next example that we've got here, we got this deed signed here. Okay, there was a deed that came to us signed and it was notarized in the Netherlands. Everything looks pretty official there. Okay, and so what we did was there's the ID of the person who signed the deed. So we sent an email to the US embassy asking, hey, we received this deed signed by so-and-so and notarized by so-and-so, saying that they're from your office. Can you confirm that this deed was signed on this date and acknowledged on this date by so-and-so? The response from the embassy was, understand, we don't have any notary, the deeds are not notarized here. They're notarized someplace else, and we don't have anybody by that name that would be notarizing deeds. So it's, again, one of the things that we've just figured out, look, let's just at least take that next step and check it out if things don't feel right. The purpose for this slide here is really just to say, hey, look, make sure that if you or your client or somebody finds themselves a victim here, have some sort of action plan in place. You got to get in touch with the title company. You got to get in touch with the FBI. Local cops can't do anything to freeze the money. Only the FBI can shine their badge around and say that money's not leaving the States. Okay, and you got to get to them in a hurry. And that's what Certified is for too. Certified is a fraud recovery company as well. Primarily here, we're just saying back in 2010, did we allow one person to initiate a wire? Yeah, we sure did. Not anymore. Okay. When the criminals pivot to do something different, so do we. Okay. We didn't require a call to the seller to verify wire transfer instructions in 2013. Now we certainly do. Okay. Did we have closers reach out to the buyers when their title order was placed right away? No, not necessarily, but we're doing it now because again, in that example that I gave, somehow before that title order was placed, that, actually in that case there, the title order and everything was placed, it was getting ready to close. But we're finding now that if we can get to the buyer early, get their information early, get them our wire transfer instructions early and tell them that those instructions won't change, that it's a lot safer. Don't have to worry about anybody spoofing an email and trying to send different instructions. Okay, and then we never let, back then, we used to let people, hey, here's your closing package, go get it notarized, okay, and send it back to us. Not anymore. So it's just, again, a number of things that if, as times change and experiences change, so do we. What are we going to say in 2024 and in the future? Who knows? Okay. Lastly, just to point out, you may already be aware of these three things. There are three new laws that have come into play in the last year or so. One is the private road maintenance. It was, if any of you have ever had the experience, if you're dealing with a buyer and the buyer's trying to get financing for the purchase and the property is on a private road, Fannie Mae will loan money in a case like that as long as there is a recorded private road agreement. Okay, but if there's no private road agreement, Fannie Mae says, we won't loan on that one unless the Wisconsin statutes at least fill in the gap. So we were able to assist and get some legislation passed now. So there is a statute that says that in the event there is no private road agreement recorded, here's how the parties that live on this private road are going to maintain it. And that has passed the muster with Fannie Mae. So now that's not an issue anymore. The next new law. So that was the 2021 WIS Act 99, which came into play at the end of 2021. The next new one here deals with easements. Okay. The old law said that if you had an easement recorded, if you didn't re-record the easement within 60 years of the first initial recording date, it expired in theory. It was no longer effective. Okay. They changed, and that came that became problematic, where people would buy properties and they'd find that the easement was recorded more than 60 years ago, and most people didn't know anything about the law. But if they tried to challenge it, in theory, the person lost their easement rights if they were buying the property more than 60 years from the date it was originally recorded. And if the actual property that was burdened by that easement wanted to raise issue, they could say, sorry, your easement rights are gone because it was never re-recorded after that 60 years. So what they did was they changed the law a little bit to say a private easement is enforceable against the burdened property if it was recorded on or after January 1st of 1960. So if it was recorded on or after January 1 of 1960, it goes on forever, never expires. If it was recorded on or after January 1st, 1960, if it was re-recorded, that's what I was thinking. If it wasn't recorded before January 1, if it wasn't re-recorded before January 1st of 1960, if it gets re-recorded after January 1 of 1960, but it specifically refers to the pre-1960 easement, then it goes on and it's enforceable.
Everybody follow that?
So as long as if it's re-recorded after January 1st of 1960, as long as it references back to the old easement, it's okay. Lastly, if it was recorded before January 1st of 1960, it doesn't necessarily go away as long as you can provide physical evidence that that easement continued to be used by the person who's trying to enforce it. So as long as you can continue to provide evidence of that, they'll say, hey, look, yeah, sure, the number of years have gone by, but people have continued to use the easement right up until now. So that certainly helps. And then the homeowners association new laws have passed to say that homeowners associations have to record their restrictive covenants and things like that with the Register of Deeds. And they've also they've got to record them with the Register of Deeds, and they have to post those restrictions to their website if they have one. Right? That just helps folks like you, folks like us, when we're trying to get that information for your buyers. They've got to file contact information for their officers with the Department of Financial Institutions. And they've limited the charges or the fees for making copies of that stuff if they've got to provide copies. And then the homeowners association has to provide written payoff statements within a certain period of time. And then they've got the cost for doing that. It's got to be free unless the actual homeowners association has put a rule in place that says they can charge more. Okay, but those are the 3 new laws that have kind of come into play in the last year and a half or so.
2 comments that I was talking to Jen and Rachel about. House to home team does majority of our buyers with Focus. Many agents just choose to use the title company when they're on the selling side, and when they're on the buying side, they just say, hey, we use the same one as the seller. I highly encourage you to support Keller Williams and Focus by using them. Plus, obviously, you have 2 fabulous ladies that help us with everything. You've got continuity, you've got relationships, things go smoother. So I would be happy to provide you, because we think of today, provide you with the letter that House to Home team sends to the lender saying, this is, pardon me?
There's one on Drive.
Okay, there's
Yes,
one on
House
the,
to Home team and Sold by Sarah team have a really pretty template that we provided to
okay, can you,
Andy, who put it on the drive.
okay, I just want to make sure mine is billable, because we have it in PDF and now, just so that they can just take it, remove my logo. Oh,
It doesn't have your, it's just KW Prestige.
perfect, okay. But it is so easy. All you do is when you get an accepted offer, you give the offer to the lender with this letter. And then let Focus Title know about it, and then they will follow up to see if it goes and happens. The only other request is, can you provide us with something that spells out quickly, like bullets or something, a fraud thing that we could give to our transaction coordinator or ourselves to give to the buyer, or if we're on the selling side, letting them know to watch out?
Sure.
Why not do that with every offer we get?
Yeah, I mean, we could probably modify at least those 2 slides that says, hey, here are the characteristics, at least of things that we think
Yeah.
could become a fraudulent transaction. And then, you know,
So if you're the seller, if you're the buyer. If you could do something like that, I think it just,
It'd be nice to
That's
do
for
a listing
education.
presentation too, just in the packet you send them.
yeah.
For your buyer's consult, things to just keep an eye out for.
And we'll just make it part of the protocol to automatically send it out. At least we're educating.
And that's just it, really, like, again, this presentation, Scott does such a phenomenal job making it relatable and understandable, but it's not meant to make anybody afraid to continue being the rock star agent that you are. It's meant to educate you, because knowledge is power. So you're going to grow your business by having more knowledge.
Right.
We can certainly
I
put
just found out
something
it's on,
together for you to
on
give to
Google.
your
They don't
buyers
need to do it. I just found it out.
and your sellers and your listing presentations. But I just also want to emphasize what Scott touched on, like, we've changed our protocol. So we are ever adapting. And now in the very beginning of the transaction, we are reaching out and introducing ourselves to your buyers or to your sellers. And we are helping educate them as well.
Good.
So they're receiving auto-generated emails that are explaining like who we are, what our role is. If you need to wire funds, these are our wire instructions. They will never change. Stay in contact with us. We've had agents who will, send us a text with a screenshot. Tina just did it the other day. She's like, is this legit? And it was a picture of our certified email. And I said, it is. Like, we know what it looks like too. We can help guide you with that. Don't ever feel like this is your burden to try to navigate and catch these people on your own. Like, you have a
No, you'd be our
support
first call.
system in this office, whether it's each other, Focus Title, Scott, like our underwriters are amazing at helping us. And they are always there for us, ensuring that we also have the correct guidance. So it takes a village
Yeah.
and,
Yeah, but like,
use that village. We do have these, but so everyone should grab a red bag on the way out. This is just a quick little blurb on the certified, which is our wire
right.
safety protocols. And if this is something that you can do for yourself, you can photocopy it, give it to your customer.
Would that be good for the listing presentation that Jason was saying we should do? Is that
It could
something?
be, I guess I have not seen it. I'll take a peek at this.
Unless what you developed, Jen.
I feel like we do have materials, so.
Yeah.
We'll connect and then I'll get back to you and
We'll work on something.
there will be some, yeah.
And, Rachel, can you just put that letter then in each one of the bags? Yeah. This is the example of the letter that you can find on Google.
Yeah, and I'll just, too, I've used the letter and it does work. Not every single lender will use focus title or night theory, but a majority of lenders will just use what you recommend.
Yeah.
And on top of it, I mean, the title commitments are just way easier to reach us as agents too, versus a lot of the other companies.
But I do suggest getting writing back from them that they confirm that they're going to do it, because I've had it where they said that, yes, we're good to go, and then Focus all of a sudden finds out at the end, no, we use the other.
Yeah, but there's nothing that says that they still couldn't, do an about face and pivot and use it anyway.
Right.
It's still nice to, usually if you get that commitment, it's probably, what they're going to
Right.
do, but.
Right.
that-
Yeah, and
forget.
the letter when you're sending it to, what a lot of the teams will do is as soon as you're sending the offer to the lender, CCing whichever respective focus office you're working with, on that email, so then we also know, like, hey, this is who these people are financing through, and then we jump on that ship and we reach out to the lender directly as well and provide that follow-up and try to earn the business. And that is an across the board thing. So whether you're working with any of the 5 focus title offices or a Nightberry team, like, we all have the same practices in place for that. So.
Does anybody have any questions at all? Because otherwise, we're just saying, stay safe, do what you can, follow your gut. Anybody who might still be on the Zoom, anybody have any questions at all? Otherwise, terrific. Thank you again so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks,
So, if you guys have any questions on anything, just